please give it up for my man Matias and Gregarious.
Hello, everybody. All right, well, we'll do some quick intros and we'll run right into things. I'm Greg Narain. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Zealous. I've been building tools and leveraging data for a long time.
Longer than you'd like to admit.
Yeah.
I'm Matias. Happy to be here. I come from a background of customer loyalty, and my last company, we sold it to a large public 100, Fortune 100 company, and that company was around helping consumer brands adopt new technology when it was new back then. And now I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Ethos, and what we're doing is we're helping consumer brands adopt and use digital assets to get closer to their customers. And having a lot of fun doing it. Obviously a lot of education and a lot of work, but I really believe that digital assets, NFTs, have a really important role to play in the future of what brands can do with their customers.
So we chose this topic talking about this concept of customer data lakes. If you're not familiar with it, at heart, as organizations grow in sophistication, you don't just work with this hot mess of data, but you start to organize it and structure it in ways that give you advantages, right? Customer data lake is sort of like a central clearinghouse for all of the data that your organization is capturing. This is things like, attributes about your audience, their purchase history, et cetera. And so there's an important and useful analog to sort of what's going on in Web3 as we start to continue to evolve our toolkit as a new ecosystem. So Matias, do you want to explain a little bit, I guess, of that difference?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the word data lake or the term data lake is actually unnecessarily confusing, right? It's like people are probably like, what's a data lake? I think here's what's interesting. Obviously, brands and entities have lots of data, and historically they've had access to that data on a private basis. So they know who their customers are, they know who's interacting with them, and nobody else really knows. So that would be like a traditional data lake. And now there's an opportunity to create a data lake that's shared. So now when you mint something on a blockchain or you create some behavior where customers are interacting with your brand on a blockchain, that data is available to you, but it's also available to others as well. And I think that shared community data pool is really interesting. I don't know if that was the question you exactly had, but I think that's a really interesting piece to kind of dive into.
Absolutely. And I think one of the distinctions we've seen from a brand point of view is that oftentimes brands are very protective of their data, right? So traditionally, like a data lake is like a very private thing that you keep internal to your organization. This is kind of a new way of thinking though, right? Because organizations are like, hey, what if more of our data lived outside? And that's a little scary, but at the same time, it unlocks a bunch of new opportunities. Now, you advise a lot of companies on some of those opportunities. Can you share some of the maybe use cases of that?
Yeah, for sure. And here's what I'd say. I'd say it's not a binary thing. Like having a shared data set that others can have access to does not make it so you do not have your current private data infrastructure, right? So that's a really important piece to keep in mind. This is meant to be additional, accretive, and augment the things you're doing. And I like examples. I think when I was a kid, I had a Jeep, and we found other people in the neighborhood that had Jeeps, and we'd meet up. We were like a little Jeep club. What's interesting about that is like, we create our own little data lake of who had Jeeps just because we saw people driving around, and we interacted with each other on the fact that we all like these Jeeps, right? So I think that's a good example. They're laughing at me here, but I don't know. I think that's a good example of what this technology can do, right? There's a lot of brand advocates that would like to get together, that may want to create events together, may want to collaborate. And if a brand's intentional on, hey, let's make this type of data available to more than just us because it could foster this type of environment and we'll help support that, I think it could lead to some really interesting use cases.
I got a comment. Someone still didn't know what a data lake was. So let me give you a different take on it. It's basically a database, right? And it's a database of all the kinds of data you know about your customers, organized in a way that gives you like new special powers, right? So when you know that Fanzo shops every Monday at a certain time, you can use that data to then say craft like a special offer for Fanzo because you know where he's going to be and what he's going to buy, right? When you don't have that data, you sort of mass market, mass appeal, and that has like a lot of downsides because it's the bigger your audience you have to reach means more money you spend, right? So when you get to data to target, then you get to like way better outcomes faster, more efficiently, more effectively, right? Now, we made this distinction of like the There's a customer data lake, which tends to be like your traditional data. But what's a community data lake look like? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jeep one's a good example, but there's more than just transactional data, right? So if a brand can see, or if others can see, hey, here's a group of people that all have similar interests, that leads to gatherings and like events and collaborations. But for the first time ever now, brands could even get a bit deeper on that, which is like, imagine if you could be a part of the conversation and you could reward people for certain types of events or conversations. Now it's more than just transaction data, it's conversational data, it's maybe like analytics on which locations they've gone to. So I think the shared data lake is not to be like, it should be accretive, right? And there's a lot of new behaviors that can be captured and rewarded.
Yeah, I think we, in our notes, we took down just some of the ways or some of the assets that go in the community version of a data lake. So we've got everything from transactions. So think about your traditional receipts, proof of purchase, proof of X, whatever proof of we want to do today in Web3. We've also got the marketing side. So think about like your claims, right? Like when you put something out there in Web3 and you're like, great, this is really self-identifying the most passionate people, the most connected people to come and claim those items. The third one we had was rewards.
Yeah.
So building on that data, now do I drop like something to somebody, right? Like based on your behavior, your exposure in the past. But then you can monitor, like, so what they do with it? Did they sell it? Did they keep it, right? Like, did they move it to another place? Where's that place? Is that place interesting? Maybe we can learn more from that. And then I think the fourth one is the behavioral side, which is, if we think about community, we think about tokenomics, but we think about all the things like your Discord roles and all these other attributes and ways that you are organizing or self-organizing in your ecosystem. This is all valuable data that largely we are not leveraging today, right? Like we sort of like maybe see it go by, but we don't take advantage of it.
And where the rubber hits the road, I think, is on new opportunities to learn the things about customers that you otherwise haven't learned yet, right? Because if we're just using this technology to give brands current data, then it's not really useful, right? But let me give you a real life example. So we were meeting with a large fashion luxury brand yesterday. And one thing that was interesting is like their best customers are people that spend lots of money with them. But they know who those people are already, right? So where could this technology play a role in helping them uncover new things? Well, you know who's also really important to them? The person who may be 23 who buys their stuff secondhand, right? And maybe they've bought in 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 bags, 4 bags, 5 bags. But historically, they wouldn't have known who that person was. And if you look at their current data, they can see that, well, the first time someone buys one of our things, it's probably secondhand. So if you can reward someone buying something for in the secondary market or buying something from somebody else, and you can capture who that customer is, well, now you can start giving rewards and perks to them like you would your other best customers. I mean, I think that's a really powerful example of what this technology can do, and not just replace existing stuff, but provide new benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a brand today and you're like, great, how do I use this stuff now? We took some notes. Maybe you can expand on these a little bit. But what do you do? Like, if you want to try doing this today, the first thing is very easy. Just do experiments, right? Don't wait. Don't ponder for too long. It's a very forgiving space, actually. Like most folks they have a hard time with that because everyone wants perfection, right? But experimenting, really, really important. Do very small proofs of concept. Don't like blast this to your entire customer base. Find 5, 10, 50, 100 of your really passionate users that are like always poking their head up, asking for something to do or looking for something or contributing. Experiment with them. The third part that we wrote down was removing like the permanence, because I think this is like a big thing that sits on brands' minds, is that there is no temporary version of what we're doing, right? Like it feels so permanent, the blockchain, you're writing forever, right? But that's true to an extent. I mean, it's factually true, but it doesn't mean that your brand is forever going to be the experiment that you do right now, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I wholeheartedly agree. I think two things to think about is like, what happens if you don't experiment? What happens if you don't, and then this really takes off, and then now you're starting kind of way behind, right? And another, maybe this is an example, is, and this is what we talk to brands about, is like, think about TikTok. There were brands that jumped on TikTok early. They were able to acquire customers at a lower cost because they were early on TikTok, and now they have a really thoughtful and thought out strategy on TikTok. And there's other brands that are now going, hey, we need to jump onto TikTok. Don't learn from that and experiment now, so you can not be, in the TikTok example, joining TikTok now.
When I think even adding to that, right? The reality is that there's a sort of innate skill set that you have to internalize also at your company. And if you're not learning these motions, it becomes very foreign, and then it looks very fake when you do it, right? Like, so people are like, you're just copying what someone's doing. You don't actually know how to do this thing. And so that practice is what does help make you perfect over time.
Totally. And it's kind of funny, right? Because who's experimenting and who's trying things? Nike, Starbucks, Adidas, right? So it's like they've been pretty good at calling stuff, right? So it's like that I think removes a lot of the risk, right? So it's like, hey, these trailblazers historically are jumping onto this and having success. You should start trying things and start seeing what this could mean for your brand before you're too late and you're kind of late to the party.
Now, there were some myths that we also wanted to debunk, I guess, right? Myth number one was that everyone needs a wallet now, right?
Yeah, I think the challenge that we've had as an industry is the technology's gotten in the way of use cases and examples and benefits to customers. And what we're doing at Ethos, and others are doing great work on this too, is like we have to make it so easy for customers to interact with this technology that the reason you're doing something isn't because the technology allows you to do it this way or doesn't allow you to do it. And there's a lot of innovation that still has to happen. But there's company like Ethos where we're spending a lot of money and resources innovating on literally making it so easy that someone like my aunt, my uncle, my mom can interact with this technology. And I think that's actually the big important thing here, because this community doesn't get better if there's less people. We need to have more people, and more people look like my aunt, uncle, cousins, that type of thing.
Yeah, and a couple others that we kind of addressed a little bit, but it doesn't have to be large scale. Small is great, right? Small is intimate. Small feels powerful. Small gets you further faster, right? It's also not expensive anymore, right? Like, I think maybe if you're doing pure play ETH, right, like, or something like that, it might be an expensive proposition, but you can work on so many other chains.
Well, and the other one too is like the cost isn't actually that high. And if you were on a blockchain like Polygon or Flow, it's like crazy low cost. And then the other piece is the sustainability factor. We meet with brands all the time where they initially start off by saying, "Isn't this bad for the environment?" And no, but like for real,
Still,
oh, it's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah, and I think Flow's done a good job. I think Polygon's done a good job. But when you actually look at what the environmental impact is of minting one transaction versus like a Google search or watching YouTube or any of these things, it really puts it in perspective that this is not, worse for the environment than anything else we're doing online.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental pieces I would say is a lot of times we, we think about Web3, I guess, from this technology point of view, and oftentimes there's this like misalignment of like being maximalist about using the technology for the sake of the technology. I like to think of Web3 way more about the mindset, right? It's about the idea of like building community. It's about shared ownership. It's about shared participation. It's about co-creation and collaboration. Those are way more interesting trend lines for you to pull on than writing things to the blockchain. And so either way, just get better at that stuff. You're going to be in a better position going forward. Whether or not you use Web3, the blockchain, et cetera, to do those things, likely will have benefit, but not a necessity to start to learn the skills.
And there's a lot of vendors and suppliers and technology folks at this conference, and that's the challenge that we have. We have to create real examples of real benefits that otherwise are not possible without this technology, or we will have failed, right? Like, we can't just replace existing things for users and customers. We have to create new experiences, and I think this technology allows that, but we all have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and I think the last point I'll make there is, if you're going back to your boss and you're like, hey, we want to try some Web3 things, we want to experiment some, don't go right at your main revenue stream, right? Find a new thing that you can do. Find a thing that makes your customers happier. Find a way that you may make more money. You know, we talked about Nike, for example. You know, folks are like, why is Nike doing this? Well, guess what? There's an entire industry left for them to mine in producing digital goods that have no impact whatsoever on their physical business, right? And so they can experiment until they're blue in the face because everything is new, it's recreated, the technology is moving, and it is totally accretive from a revenue point of view. So if you're gonna go try to make the case to your boss about what to do not say, hey, like we should displace our current revenue line for something like that.
It's more like, you know how there's customers we don't know who they are yet, and they buy our stuff secondhand? Let's find out who they are. And I think we can use this Web3 technology to do that. Or hey, you know how we send a newsletter once a year, or like an image of something once a year to reward, to connect with them? Why don't we send them a digital version of something? Right? That seems like it'll pop and get them, and maybe they'll give us more information. But it's the new use cases that will and are exciting. And again, that's the challenge that we all have, is to find new, better experiences for people through this technology.
So we've got like 1 minute. I don't know. I think our time changed somehow, but
I think when you talk, they like you, so they keep adding time to yours.
there's it's a bonus time thing. You get like you keep earning more time to chat. Are there any key lessons from like your work with your clients though that you see like either as easy approaches that have helped them win, or like hurdles that like folks can go back and like be aware of?
I think brands are really smart, and the people that work at brands are really smart. And a lot of time people will think and say, "Oh, they're slow. They don't react on things." And I think that's wrong. I think brands do take chances. They do react to things. It's us who are creating the technology and the solutions that have to create have to create applications for them that fit their business needs, right? So where brands can help is help guide us, like help say, "Hey, we could do that, but this is what we want to do. Go build it and come back to me." Right? And those are the brands that we really like working with, because the feedback loop is real. Like, they know their customers better than we do. And it's worked. Like, we've had brands tell us, "Hey, we don't want to sell an NFT. We want to give one away for free." And we go, "Great, we'll give you a feature that allows you to do that." And then we've had brands say, "Well, we want it to be able to go to everybody, all of our customers. So we created a feature that makes an NFT just a link, so that anybody can just click the link and then interact with it." So, the best ideas come from brands. And I guess where we could ask brands for help is be candid, be open, and say, "Hey, that kind of works, but this would work better. Go build it." Because there's a lot of people at this conference that are ready to work, like ready to build things and ready to help drive adoption.
Yeah, well, we finally did run out of time. So we hope that was helpful. By all means, shoot us a DM if you want to chat more. We're happy to help if we can. And as Fanzo would say, just press the damn button and get going.
There you go. Thanks, guys.